Sometimes we confuse breaking with ending, as if the moment something in our lives shatters, it means that everything about us has reached its final chapter. But the truth is, your breaking point is not your ending point. Life has this way of allowing circumstances, disappointments, betrayals, or failures to strike us at the very places we thought were unshakable. And in those moments, it feels like everything you knew about yourself, everything you were holding on to just collapses in your hands. But hear me, what feels like a collapse is often the foundation being cleared for a new construction God had in mind all along. When you hit the bottom, it's not because God has abandoned you. It's because he's showing you that the bottom is where you find out what can't be taken from you. The job may fall apart. The relationship may come to an end. The dream you thought would carry you for a lifetime may crumble, but there's still something left. There's still breath in your body. There's still purpose in your spirit, and there's still destiny waiting to be revealed. Your breaking doesn't disqualify you. It actually proves you're strong enough to survive what was meant to bury you. We often pray for strength, for growth, for destiny, but we rarely realize that strength only shows up when something tries to break us. Growth doesn't happen in comfort. It happens in stretching, in pain, in letting go of the familiar. And destiny will require you to walk through seasons where the very thing you thought you needed gets stripped away. Not because God delights in your suffering, but because he's clearing away the things that would have kept you too small for the place he's taking you. Think about it. The seed has to break before it becomes a tree. The alabaster box had to be broken before the fragrance filled the room. Even your own heart, the very place that feels like it's been cracked open beyond repair, becomes the place where God plants resilience, wisdom, and compassion. You're not broken beyond use. You're broken into purpose. I know it's tempting to believe that the shattering means it's over, that the dream you had can never be revived, that the love you lost can never be healed, that the mistake you made has permanently ruined your chance at becoming who God called you to be. But I came to tell you, endings in the hands of God are never really endings. They're transitions. They're pivots. They're divine interruptions that stop you from living in a lesser version of yourself. The enemy wants you to confuse your breaking point with your burial, but God wants you to recognize it as a planting. You may be in the dirt. You may feel covered, pressed down, unseen, but you're not buried, you're planted. And when you're planted, there's a season coming where what was hidden will break through. But the breaking through only happens because you are willing to endure the breaking first. So don't despise the moments where life seems unfair, where you're left wondering how it all fell apart, where you cry yourself to sleep questioning if you'll ever feel whole again. Those moments are sacred. They're the places where your faith learns to breathe without evidence. They're the places where your spirit grows legs and learns to walk even when everything around you screams, stay down. And when you survive what should have destroyed you, when you walk out of what others never thought you'd come back from, you'll see why the breaking was necessary. You'll look back and realize that the pain pressed you into purpose, the loss pointed you toward destiny, and the breaking made room for blessings you would have never recognized without it. So if you feel broken right now, if you feel like you've reached your limit, if you feel like life has pulled the rug from underneath you, don't count yourself out. This isn't your ending point. It's the place where God is rewriting your story. There are moments in life when the pain is so heavy, you can't even form the words to describe it. You sit in silence. You weep without explanation. You carry the ache in your chest that feels too deep for language. And in those moments, you wonder if anyone really sees you, if anyone really hears you, if anyone even cares that you're drowning in something you can't name. But here's the truth. Heaven has a way of translating pain into a language that only God can fully understand. Your silence is not empty. Your tears are not meaningless. Your pain is not wasted. Every ounce of what you feel is being interpreted before the throne of God as a prayer too deep for words. Sometimes we think prayer has to be eloquent, structured, and full of powerful phrases. But prayer is not always what comes out of your mouth. Sometimes it's what falls from your eyes. Sometimes it's the groan you release when the weight is too much. Sometimes it's just showing up in God's presence without a single word because you don't even know where to begin. And God doesn't look at you in that silence and wonder why you can't articulate yourself better. He looks at you with compassion because he knows that pain itself is speaking louder than words ever could. Pain is a language that heaven understands because it goes beyond the surface. Words can sometimes lie. Words can be dressed up. Words can pretend. But pain is honest. Pain doesn't know how to fake it. Pain comes raw, unfiltered, vulnerable, and heaven responds to that authenticity. Pain says, God, I don't even know what to ask for, but I need you. Pain says, I can't make sense of this, but I trust that you hear me. Pain says, I don't have the strength to explain myself, but I believe you see me. And I know it feels unfair that the season you're in has demanded so much from you that your heart had to break, that your faith had to be stretched, that your trust had to be tested. But what if I told you that the very thing that hurt you is the very thing that is positioning you to hear God clearer than ever before? Because when life is comfortable, we don't always lean in. When everything is going right, we sometimes forget to listen. But when pain shows up, suddenly the distractions fall away. Suddenly you're aware of just how desperately you need him. Pain tunes your ear to the frequency of heaven, and it allows you to hear whispers you might have missed in the noise of success, comfort, and routine. You don't have to like pain for it to be purposeful. You don't have to understand it for it to be useful. What you do have to do is trust that God is not ignoring it. Every tear has been counted. Every sleepless night has been noted. Every cry in the shower, every breakdown in the car, every moment where you smiled in public but collapsed in private, he saw it all. And none of it will go unnoticed because heaven responds to pain. You may not realize it now, but some of the most powerful seasons of your life will come out of the moments you thought were your weakest. The things you'll share with others, the testimony that will bring healing to someone else, won't come from your highlight reel. It'll come from your pain. You'll tell someone, I know how it feels to want to give up, but I also know what it feels like when God shows up in the middle of it. And they'll listen, not because you're perfect, but because you're proof that pain doesn't have the final say. There's power in realizing that pain is not your enemy. It may not feel good, but it is an instrument in the hands of God. It creates empathy. It builds resilience. It opens your heart in ways you never imagined. And while you're sitting there thinking your pain disqualified you, heaven is using it to qualify you to comfort others, to qualify you to carry wisdom, to qualify you to walk into rooms with authority you didn't even know you had. So the next time you feel like you have no words left, when all you can do is weep, when all you can do is sit in silence, remind yourself heaven hears this too. Heaven understands this language. You are not ignored. You are not overlooked. You are not alone. It's easy to believe that brokenness makes you weak, that if people saw the cracks in your heart, the scars on your past, or the tears you cry when nobody's looking, they'd call you fragile, damaged, or unworthy. But the truth is, brokenness doesn't hide your strength. It reveals it. You only discover what you're made of when life presses you to the edge and you're forced to keep walking anyway. Strength is not proven in the moments when everything is steady and predictable. Strength is proven when the storm hits and somehow you find a way to stand. You see, strength has layers you never notice until you're forced to peel them back. Most people think strength looks like having it all together, never showing emotion and keeping a smile on your face no matter what's happening behind closed doors. But real strength shows up in the moments when you admit you're hurting, but you still get out of bed. Real strength is choosing to forgive when bitterness would feel easier. Real strength is letting go of what you thought you needed so you can step into what God knows you deserve. The truth is, some of the strongest people you'll ever meet don't look strong on the surface. They don't always walk into the room with confidence or shout about their achievements. They carry their strength quietly because their strength was birthed in the hidden battles no one else even knew they were fighting. And isn't that the story of so many of us? People only see the version of you that made it, the version that survived, the version that smiles again. But they don't know about the nights you almost gave up, the phone calls you couldn't answer, the days when the weight on your chest made it hard to breathe. That's where your strength was born. Brokenness reveals the resilience you didn't know you had. It shows you that you can lose and still rise. It teaches you that you can be betrayed and still love. It proves that you can walk through fire and not be consumed. And sometimes God allows the breaking not to punish you, but to expose the strength He already placed within you. You were stronger than you thought you were all along. It just took the breaking for you to see it. I know it doesn't feel good when it's happening. Nobody likes being stretched. Nobody enjoys being crushed. Nobody asks for the seasons that leave them shattered. But you look back and you realize that had you not been broken, you wouldn't know how powerful you really are. You wouldn't know how to fight for yourself. You wouldn't know how to stand on faith instead of feelings. You wouldn't know that you are tougher, wiser, braver, and more capable than anyone gave you credit for, including yourself. That's why sometimes the very thing you thought would destroy you actually ends up being the very thing that defines you. It wasn't the job you lost that destroyed you. It was the job you lost that revealed you could rebuild from nothing. It wasn't the heartbreak that destroyed you. It was the heartbreak that showed you love doesn't define your worth. It wasn't the failure that destroyed you. It was the failure that revealed you have the courage to start again. Brokenness becomes a mirror, and when you look into it, you finally see your own strength staring back. And here's the beauty. Once you see that strength, nobody can take it from you. Life can throw the storm. People can throw their opinions. The enemy can throw distractions. But you'll never doubt your ability to survive again. Because you'll remember, if I made it through that, I can make it through this. Every scar becomes evidence. Every crack becomes proof. Every broken place becomes a reminder that you carry something greater on the inside. So, stop despising the broken pieces of your story. Stop hiding your scars like there's something to be ashamed of. Those are the very things that show the world your strength. Your brokenness didn't make you weak. It revealed the warrior that was living inside of you all along. What you thought would destroy you is actually what exposed your strength. Sometimes the hardest part about walking through pain is realizing that it wasn't just about you. The wounds you carry feel so personal, so heavy, so isolating. But the truth is, what you've been through is not just shaping your life. It's shaping the lives of the people connected to you. Your story carries healing for others. The very places you've been broken are the same places God will use to pour out comfort, wisdom, and strength into someone else's life. It's not easy to accept that. We'd all prefer to have a testimony without the test, a victory without the battle, a triumph without the scars. But if you look closely at the moments where your life was changed by someone else's words, it probably wasn't when they told you how perfect their life was. It was when they opened up about their struggles. It was when they shared about nights they thought they wouldn't survive and how God carried them anyway. It was when they admitted they were broken too, and yet they discovered a strength greater than themselves. That's what connected with you. That's what made you believe healing was possible for you too. And that's the same power your story holds for someone else. We live in a world where people put filters on everything. They filter their photos, they filter their words, they filter their lives. Everyone wants to look flawless, like they've never gone through anything. But perfection doesn't heal people. Transparency does. When you take off the mask and say, yes, I was broken. Yes, I messed up. Yes, I almost gave up. But here I am. Suddenly your story becomes a mirror where someone else sees their own reflection and realizes they're not alone. Your scars become instructions for someone else's survival. The mother who lost a child and still found her way forward becomes the encouragement another grieving mother needs to know she can keep living. The man who battled addiction and overcame becomes the proof another person needs to know they can break free too. The person who carried shame for years but finally found forgiveness becomes the light for someone else trapped in guilt. You don't have to have a perfect story to impact lives. You just have to be willing to share the real one. And I know that feels risky because sharing your story means exposing your wounds. It means letting people see the parts of you that aren't polished, the parts you work so hard to bury. But hear me, your healing is not complete until it begins to flow outward. Healing that stays hidden can only go so far. Healing that's shared becomes a ripple effect. It multiplies. Every time you speak of what God has brought you through, someone else begins to believe He can do the same for them. Every time you offer your testimony, someone else finds the courage to fight one more day. Maybe that's why your pain was so deep, because your purpose is so wide. Maybe you had to walk through what you walked through because God trusted you to carry the story that someone else would need. Maybe what you thought was punishment was actually preparation, not just for your destiny, but for the destinies of the people who will one day look to you for hope. So instead of asking, why me? Maybe it's time to ask, who is connected to this? Because the truth is, your survival wasn't just for you. It was for your children who will learn resilience by watching you rise again. It was for your friend who will finally believe in restoration after hearing your story. It was for the stranger who will hear your testimony years from now and find the strength to keep going. Your story is not just about you. It's about everyone who will find healing in it. So don't let shame silence you. Don't let fear convince you that your pain has no purpose. Don't let the enemy trick you into thinking your story is too messy to matter. The very mess you've been through is the miracle someone else is waiting to hear. When life falls apart, it's natural to think that everything is over. The dream you held in your hands slipped away. The relationship you invested your heart into dissolved. The plan you built so carefully unraveled right before your eyes. In those moments, you can't help but think that what you lost was the best you were ever going to have. But purpose has this strange way of being born out of the very pieces you thought were useless. What shattered in your life is not the end of the story. It's the material God is using to build something greater than you could have imagined. We've all been there, staring at the fragments of what used to be whole, wondering how it will ever come together again. And if we are honest, sometimes we don't even want to try. Sometimes the pain of picking up the pieces feels heavier than the hope of starting over. But God doesn't need the picture, perfect version of your life to work. He just needs the pieces, the broken dreams, the ended relationships, the failed attempts, the moments that embarrassed you, the things that left you questioning your own worth. All of it is raw material in His hands. Think about it. Some of the most powerful stories ever told were built from broken pieces. The person who failed at one thing but discovered a new path that became their life's work. The one who thought love was gone forever but found joy again in an unexpected season. The one who messed up publicly but used that very failure to teach and inspire others. Pieces don't disqualify you. Pieces remind you that wholeness is not always about getting everything back the way it was, but about letting God create something new out of what remains. We keep waiting for life to go back to how it used to be, but purpose rarely lives in the past. Purpose lives in the rebuilding. It lives in the ability to look at the pieces, admit that it's not what you planned, and still believe that something beautiful can come from it. Sometimes what you thought was a setback was really just a redirection. Sometimes what you thought was rejection was actually protection. Sometimes what felt like the end was really just a necessary break to point you toward the beginning of something greater. There's a scripture that says God makes all things work together for good. But notice it doesn't say some things. It doesn't say only the good things, only the perfect things, only the easy things. It says all things. That means even the nights you regret, even the mistakes you wish you could erase, even the seasons that broke your heart, all of it can be woven into purpose. The pieces you thought were too shattered are the very ones He will use to show the world His strength through your story. And here's the beauty. When purpose emerges from the pieces, it often looks nothing like what you expected. It's bigger, bolder, more meaningful. You realize that what you lost wasn't the end of you. It was the stretching of you. It was God saying, I know you think this is all you're capable of, but I see more in you. I see greater in you. I see impact you couldn't have imagined if everything had stayed the same. Sometimes you have to lose the picture you had in mind so God can give you the masterpiece He had in store. It won't look like what you planned, but it will carry the weight of purpose that makes every broken moment worth it. The love you thought was gone makes room for the love that's true. The opportunity you missed clears the path for the one that's aligned. The dream that shattered makes space for the destiny that endures. So if you're standing in the middle of broken pieces right now, don't despise them. Don't walk away from them. Don't assume they're useless. Place them in God's hands and watch Him create something greater. If it cut you that deeply, it's because it was connected to your destiny. Sometimes we wonder why certain things hurt more than others. Why some losses shake us to our core. Why some betrayals almost break us in two. The truth is, the weight of your pain is often evidence of the weight of your calling. God trusted you with a breaking that felt unbearable because He knew He could trust you with the building that would come after it. It doesn't mean the pain was easy. It doesn't mean you didn't question, doubt, or cry yourself to sleep. It doesn't mean you didn't feel crushed under the pressure. What it means is that every ounce of that suffering was proof of how much God had placed inside of you. Because the greater the purpose, the greater the process. And process often shows up in the form of pain. There are people who could walk away from the very thing that almost destroyed you and never blink an eye. But not you. It mattered to you on a soul level. That's why it broke you. That's why it left a mark. That's why it felt like your heart was ripped wide open. And that's also why it's going to transform you. You can't carry destiny and not expect to feel the pressure of it pressing against your life. The cracks, the breaking, the tears, they're signs that you're carrying something bigger than you ever imagined. We spend so much of our lives trying to avoid pain, trying to stay comfortable, trying to protect ourselves from breaking. But if you only ever live in safe spaces, you'll never discover the depth of who you are. The crushing seasons are the ones that reveal your oil. The moments that tested you are the same ones that confirmed you. And while you thought your pain was evidence that you were weak, it was actually proof that you were chosen for something greater. You see, destiny is not light. It's heavy. It requires stretching. It requires endurance. It requires the kind of strength you only uncover when everything else has been stripped away. Pain is not God's way of punishing you. It's His way of preparing you. It's Him saying, I need to shape you, refine you, toughen you. Because what I've placed on your life can't be carried casually. Look back at the things that hurt you most, the heartbreak that almost made you give up, the failure that made you doubt if you were enough, the loss that made you feel like you'd never smile again. And yet, here you are, stronger, wiser, more compassionate, more aware of who you are and what you're capable of. That's not just survival. That's evidence of purpose. That's proof that the pain didn't just happen to you. It happened for you. And if you really think about it, some of the things you endured could have taken somebody else out. There are people who wouldn't have survived what you did. There are people who would have folded under the weight of what crushed you. But you're still here. You may be bruised, but you're still standing. You may be scared, but you're still breathing. And the reason you're still here is because your pain was never random. It was tied to your calling. So instead of asking, why me? Maybe it's time to start declaring, why not me? Because if God trusted me with this much pain, then He must trust me with this much purpose. If He allowed me to carry this breaking, then He must believe I can carry the blessing that comes after it. If He saw fit to let me walk through the fire, then He must know there's gold inside of me that only the flames could reveal. Your pain is not something to be ashamed of. It is not something that makes you less than. It is not proof that you are unworthy. On the contrary, it is the very evidence that God has called you higher, deeper, further. Your pain is the receipt that destiny is real in your life.